update on the President of the United States touring the storm damage in the upstate of South Carolina and western North Carolina. With us is our Olivia Donnelly. She's at GSP International Airport, where Marine One, bearing the president back from that survey of damage, is about to touch down before he gets back on Air Force One. Olivia, can you tell us what you're seeing there at the airport now?
Yes, Gordon. So all of the Ospreys on the ground, and we are waiting on Marine One to finally touch down, and that has President Biden in there. He left a couple hours ago to go survey and assess the damages following Hurricane Helene. Now, I did just get the North Carolina aerial tour as President Biden touches down here at GSP following his aerial tour around North Carolina. And I can tell you that they started in Greenville. They made their way to Brevard, into Asheville. They saw Swannanoa, Black Mountain, Chimney Rock, Lake Lure, and now they are back here in the upstate, again, assessing the damages from Hurricane Helene. We first came to you earlier where we were waiting on Air Force One's arrival and for President Biden to get into Marine One, where he went with local elected officials, a regional effort. He met with Governor McMaster, where he was briefed on the destruction and devastation and the assistance needed in the upstate. He met with the mayor of Asheville. I can tell you Senator Lindsey Graham was here, representatives from the state as well. We know Will Timmons was here, Jeff Duncan here, along with Jerome Rice, mayor of Spartanburg, all on the ground assisting in these efforts to go tour the area. Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina also with President Biden in this effort to go assess the damages and provide the assistance in the road to the recovery and the efforts that lie ahead to get these people the assistance that they need. And what you're seeing right now is Marine One touch base back in the upstate here at GSP following those aerial tours. And there was an emphasis from the White House that they wanted to do this by Marine One. They did not want to be on the ground because the White House did not want to interrupt the current efforts underway. We know that there's significant and substantial FEMA requests and assistance is starting to be deployed to the region in western North Carolina and in the upstate. There's thousands of people on the ground, and efforts are underway to get these people the help. A majority of it up toward our neighbors in western North Carolina. We know that there's 4,500 FEMA workers on the ground following Helene, 1,200 of them up in the area of Asheville, as well as the Department of Defense deploying 1,000 troops into the region, all with the Infantry Battalion Division. We do know that Air Force is assisting operations in aerial search efforts for people who are still needing a rescue. We know the Navy is using boats into the region that are not accessible by road, and the Army is using their convoys to get into places that you no longer can get to by roadways. And that is what President Biden saw today in those aerial from Marine One, the aerial views of just how significant the destruction is in western North Carolina and in the upstate. Now, again, part of that route that we received from officials here at GSP International Airport, when President Biden left GSP, their first stop was over toward Brevard, where they saw Glass Rock at the Pisgah Forest area. They headed to Asheville. They moved on to the Swannanoa area, where we know was significantly impacted by Helene. Their tour brought them to Black Mountain. We've received several reports of people stuck and stranded on Black Mountain with no way to get off. So that's where they're looking at some of the assessments of the damages there. They made their way to Chimney Rock, followed by Lake Lure, and then are now back in Greenville. So from here, we know that Governor McMaster is supposed to be meeting with medical professionals, and he'll be talking with 7 News later at Bon Secours Wellness Arena, briefing us on what's happening in the upstate. And we know that President Biden then will continue his assessment of the damages in the upstate. He'll then move on to North Carolina, which he's already gotten an assessment of, but he'll meet with Governor Roy Cooper and talk about what the assessment of the damages are going to look like in western North Carolina. We know that there are, again, thousands of people on the ground. almost nearly 2.2 million MREs. Those are meals ready to eat for people in the area. They're bringing 50 satellites into Western North Carolina. As we know, much of the upstate and Western North Carolina is completely off the grid without power, and that has posed a struggle for communications and contacting people who are maybe stranded and stuck, so that they can get some communication into the region. And that's what those efforts are going to continue today and over the coming days for President Biden. Gordon, I'll send it back to you.
Olivia, and you may not be able to see it from where you're standing there a little closer to Air Force One, but you see the Marines in position here waiting for the president to disembark Marine One. I believe that is him. First off, there he is, the president, fresh off his tour of the Carolinas today and the damage here. As you said, Olivia, there was that tour of the hardest hit areas of Western North Carolina, both those flooded by the French Broad River, those flooded by the Swannanoa, sort of bookending places like Buncombe County, and where the most extreme damage is, where people are still stranded, where over the past few days, including as recently as we saw yesterday, the National Guard is having to airlift people, literally drop lines down and pull people up. And in some cases, those search and rescues did become recovery operations, where people who have lost everything have also lost members of their family, and they are still recovering people's remains in Western North Carolina. So we'll keep an eye on President Biden here as he makes his way back over towards Air Force One. We had hoped there might be a small chance he would come over to where Olivia is and address reporters a little of what he saw here today. If he does that, we'll play it for you here live. If not, and in fact, yeah, that is North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper to the right of President Biden. So he did accompany there on Marine One to get that first person account. As Olivia has told us, they will now go on to Raleigh, the Emergency Operations Center there, as those operations are coordinated for relief in Western North Carolina. As we said, as Olivia told us, he met earlier today with Senator Lindsey Graham and Governor Henry McMaster here on the tarmac as he disembarked initially Air Force One before taking that aerial tour. The governor, as Olivia alluded to, will be speaking to us live. We think around 4 o'clock. They may slide backwards a little bit, but we'll get an update from him about exactly what he asked of President Biden and the federal government, and what he wanted the president in particular to pay attention to on this aerial tour. Hopefully as well today, we will hear from Governor Cooper, who again is here on the ground in GSP with the president, and hear more of what Governor Cooper saw on that trip, because we just did see him as the president disembarked from Air Force One, greeting here South Carolina State troopers, other first responders on the ground here. Olivia, so the president is on the ground from Marine One, making his way back toward Air Force One.
Yeah, Gordon, and actually to piggyback off of what you were mentioning and what was asked of the president when he touched down from Air Force One before he got in Marine One to assess those damages, I actually got to pull Greenville City Mayor Knox White to the side and ask him, hey, what was the conversation? He said when President Biden got off of Air Force One, he immediately gave Asheville Mayor a big hug as the community is just rallying around Western North Carolina. He said that we were all sticking and banding with her, and that was an important just moment of solidarity to show that the Western North Carolina region has significant support. Then he went on, Mayor White, to tell us that he started to speak with Mayor White, Jerome Rice, Mayor Rice of Spartanburg. He spoke with Governor McMaster, as you had mentioned, and essentially reiterated that the federal support is here and they are going to work to get whatever is needed for the upstate and Western North Carolina in the road to recovery, whether that be federal assistance, whether it be supplies, food, aid, medical needs, etc. He says one thing that was really telling was the fact that politics are not a part of this, and this is not a bipartisan. This is a bipartisan issue where the community can rally around the efforts to recover and get the people back on their feet following such a catastrophe with devastation. And he said how inviting and nice it was to see all of these elected officials come together in a time of need and rally for support for each other as catastrophes. There's no room for a political divide, but it's time to put the differences aside and work toward getting Western North Carolina, getting the upstate of South Carolina back on its feet in a moment of need. So right now, obviously, it's a difficult picture of what is going on. We do know Governor Roy Cooper walking with President Biden, likely going over some of the federal assistance that we're seeing being actively deployed to the Western North Carolina region. Additionally, here in South Carolina, those troops from Liberty active today. So they are making their way and their rounds into the region to assess the damages, to help people get back on their feet. They're using Air Force choppers to locate and make sure that they are performing rescue missions for people who are stranded. They're using trucks and convoys that military bases typically use to get to areas that are not travelable. And as you see right now, we've got crews coming out. We've got sheriff's deputies with us on scene. Obviously, because now the president is boarding Air Force One and making his way onto now what will be a journey to Raleigh at the Emergency Operations Center, so that they can then go assess what's going to come in the days ahead for Western North Carolina. And we do know, according to the White House, that Vice President Harris does have plans to go to Georgia as well to assess the damages there to get people back on their feet. Gordon.
Yeah, Olivia, thank you. Excellent coverage as always for us for today from GSP, from our Olivia Donnelly. You see, the president is back aboard what will again have the call sign Air Force One, making his way to North Carolina to continue the federal response to Hurricane Helene. You saw Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina on board Air Force One along with the president. He will accompany him back to Raleigh. Governor Henry McMaster today meeting the president along with Senator Lindsey Graham at the airport. We do expect again to hear from Henry McMaster within about a half hour or so in Greenville. He's at the Well. That's a medical shelter for those folks who don't have power but do have needs like oxygen supplies and other emergency medical needs. That's where the governor will be this afternoon. Interesting to point out here, Olivia hitting on this point, that this is a bipartisan effort. President Biden is not running for re-election. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper is not running for re-election. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster is not running for re-election. This is not a political event. This is a national recovery event, and everyone, all hands on deck to try and get those resources needed into this area. We are awaiting Air Force One as it prepares to take back off and head to Raleigh here at Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport. Olivia giving us some of the information about that federal response to $2.6 million already sent out by FEMA to 30,000 applicants so far. I do want to tell you, maybe some of you have just gotten your power back on. Maybe you've just gotten cell service and you're able to get some information about the needs you have as a result of this disaster. FEMA is taking disaster assistance applications right now, and you can call toll-free. I'm again going to give this website. It is disasterassistance.gov. That's disaster assistance, all one word, disasterassistance.gov. That federal FEMA disaster relief money is for little stuff like the things you have lost over these past few days in terms of household items, your ability to get food and get water. It is for much bigger problems like the loss of your home, the loss of a business, the loss of the income related to this. FEMA disaster assistance for individuals and businesses is open now. Like I said, already 30,000 applications from Hurricane Helene have been submitted. You can imagine, just as more people come online and get cell and internet service, those numbers are going to skyrocket. We're no longer going to be talking about millions of dollars in recovery here. This is a multi-billion-dollar recovery effort that will take years. And as I said, President Biden not running for re-election, this will extend well into someone else's presidential term. So the president, again, back aboard Air Force One. It will take a few moments for that plane to begin taxiing and departing for Raleigh here. But our coverage continues as we wait for Air Force One to continue its journey up to North Carolina. Again, stay with us. WSPA, our 7 News at 4 o'clock. We'll have that live update from Governor McMaster as we begin that newscast here in about 15 minutes. So I'm sorry, if you could say that one more time to the producer in the newsroom there. Okay, yeah, actually, if we have Olivia still with us. Olivia, you ran through a list of some of the places they visited. I remember you saying Lake Lure and others. We know those are some of the hardest hit places. Olivia, can you go through that list one more time?
Gordon, yes. So I actually received a map from airport officials following the president's tour of the upstate of Western North Carolina. And as you mentioned, they toured some of just the hardest hit areas following Hurricane Helene. They left Greenville, GSP, and made their way over toward Brevard, traveling through places like Travelers Rest. They crossed the Mountain Bridge Wilderness area, DuPont State Recreational Forest. At the Brevard area along 64 is where they then passed Glass Rock and Piscaporus up toward Asheville, and Asheville up toward Candler. They made their way toward Swannanoa. I apologize if it's hard to hear as Air Force One begins to taxi down the runway on the tarmac as President Biden is leaving. After the aerial visit in Asheville, it looks as though, indicating from what the map shows, they went ahead and they did a circular tour of Asheville before making their way towards Swannanoa, and after Swannanoa up toward Black Mountain, which we know and we've heard from several reports. Black Mountain, there are people in the Black Mountain area who are stranded and stuck there because of the lack of ability to leave out of the Black Mountain area. So that is another place where they toured following Swannanoa. After they left Black Mountain, they went to Chimney Rock, followed by Lake Lure, and now they're back in the upstate where we've mentioned, Gordon, they're headed to the North Carolina area.
Olivia, thank you for that. Thank you for your coverage here, and we appreciate you joining us for this live 7 News coverage of President Biden's visit to the upstate, preparing to depart from GSP International Airport, continuing on with that survey. A couple of notes for you joining us here. We did have access to a camera on board Marine One today. We recorded all of the footage of what the president was able to see from all these places that Olivia just told us about. You've probably seen some drone and helicopter footage of that, but we'll have a better idea of exactly what the president saw when you join us tonight at 4, 5, and 6 o'clock as we give you some of that footage, turn it around from Marine One today. We also will have more of Governor McMaster's conversation with the president there on the tarmac when he joins us very shortly today from Greenville. Olivia telling us, of course, that he in particular, and we saw some of it there on the tarmac, had very special words for the mayor of Asheville. Buncombe County, at least in terms of the number of lives claimed by this storm, has been the hardest hit part of our area. We've got more live coverage coming up tonight for you at 4 p.m., 7 News at 4, including, again, that report from Governor Henry McMaster. For now, as we watch Air Force One prepare to take off from GSP, for Olivia Donnelly, we'll send it back now to regular programming.